Good morning, everyone. This is the County Press for the 14th of July, and this is Barry.
And this is Madeline.
And we start with some society news. On Tuesday, the strollers will be meeting this Tuesday, 18th of July. The stroll will be at Lake Green, with lunch afterwards at the Hideaway at 12:15 p.m. The group will meet for coffee at Pedlar's Cafe at Langbridge at 10:30 a.m. The next session of Introducing Millbrook House will take place on Tuesday the 18th of July. This is a chance for anybody to come along and discover what is available in terms of equipment or services to visually impaired people. Introducing Millbrook House is open to everyone who would like to find out more about what is on offer. The session runs from 10:30 a.m. till 12 p.m. The Dolphins group will meet to swim on Tuesday the 18th of July at the Waterside Pool Ride. The pool is closed to the public during the session. If you would like to go swimming, please call the Society first to advise us of your level of swimming ability. Please note lifeguards are in attendance during the session. Wednesday, the weekly coffee morning will be held as usual to support this society this Wednesday on the 19th of July. The coffee mornings are not just for blind and partially sighted people. Anybody can come along and have a cup of coffee or tea as well as a piece of cake. Thursday, the knitters and natters are meeting on the 20th of July at Millbrook House. The group starts at 10:30 a.m. until 2 p.m. You can knit or just natter, then later in the afternoon volunteers come in and read to the group from different topics. Any other news? Well, the Owls will be meeting Wednesday the 20th of July at 2 p.m. at Millbrook House. The entertainment for the week's meeting will be White Harmony. The group lasts approximately 45 minutes, which is then followed by tea or coffee and cake. Please note transport may be available to some of the groups, but please call the Society first on 522-205. As some of you are aware, the Society is conducting a client consultation survey. To give you an advance warning of the questions included in the survey, it follows the recording of In Touch for as long as the survey continues. If you would like to complete a survey independently, please contact the Society on 522-205 and ask for a copy. Alternatively, you can find the survey on our website at www.iwsb.org.uk. The Society has received some new padded wallets, which will be trialled on both the Talking News and Library servers. If you receive one of these new wallets, you will notice instead of a Velcro top, they have a zip. However, you will need to turn the address card round on the front as normal.
And now we continue with the scaffolding news. Please please hear a list of known footway obstructions for works including scaffolding or hoarding. We are unable to include end dates as many are extended on a week-by-week basis. So starting with the Bay area, Lloyds Bank, Regent Street, Shanklin, 8 New Road, Brading, 26 High Street, Sandown, that's due up on the 17th of July. And in the Cowes area, the development site at Castle Street, East Cowes, Carville Court, Terminus Road, Cowes, the Royal British Legion, 85 High Street, Cowes, and current hoardings, 272 to 283 Arctic Road, Cowes, 93 High Street, Cowes, Jam and Sons, Thetis Road, Cowes, and that's due up on the 18th of July. And a new scissor lift, Waitrose, Well Street, East Cowes. Well, this is not due up until the 14th of August, and the footway will be closed. Newport area, Nippert Court, West Street, Newport. The Spectacle Maker, 81A High Street, Newport. Steddon Simpson, 121 High Street, Newport. 127 Honey Hill, Newport. Home Bargains, Taylor Road, Gunville, Carisbrooke. 137 Pyle Street, Newport, that's due up on the 17th of July. Hurst and Son, Crocker Street, Newport, that's due up on the 18th of July. The Red Cross shop in Town Lane, Newport, due up on the 24th of July. And there's a current cherry picker at Home Bargains, Taylor Road, Carisbrook, to be within the hoarding. And in the Ryde area, 26 George Street, Ryde, Ryde Street Gallery, High Street, Ryde, St Mary's Church, Ryde, that's along St Mary's Passage, 49 Union Street, Ryde, Oasis Dental Care, Melville Street, Ryde, the Royal British Legion Club, St James's Street, Ryde, Ryde Town Club, Star Street, the Cabin, Nelson Place, Saltmead Cottage, Blewett Avenue, Seaview, 12 Nelson Street, Ryde. And in the West Wight area, the King's Head, Key Street, Yarmouth, Freeze Jewellers, Kimberley House, High Street, Freshwater, Coleman's Carpets, Avenue Road, Freshwater.
5153 School Green Road, Freshwater. South Wight area, 20 High Street, Ventnor, 47 Moorview, Godshill, 15 High Street, Ventnor, due up on the 18th of July. This week's In Touch. In Touch in this week's episode, Cyrus Habib lost his sight when he was 8, and in January this year, aged 35, took up an elected position as a Lieutenant Governor of Washington State in America. He talks to Peter White about walking the fine line between sympathy and empathy when campaigning, and how technology is helping him to do his job. Listener Nick Adamson has been working for the same company in the same role for the last 12 years. He has no immediate plans to change jobs, but says contemplating a career move when you're blind throws up many challenges. He talks to Dave Williams, who has recently changed jobs, about his concerns.
And moving on now to the County Press news for Friday, July the 14th. First of all, the headline for today. Stabbed in the street. Shanklin in shock as man left bleeding. A young man was left slumped against a lamppost, bleeding heavily on the pavement after being stabbed in the chest. The brutal attack in Shanklin, which happened in daylight in a quiet residential street, has been met with shock by the community and prompted an attempted murder investigation. Dean Thompson, 26, who lives across the road with his partner Heather Harkness, 25, and 2 young children, saw the aftermath of the stabbing, which happened at Spring Gardens, near the junction with St Paul's Avenue, shortly before 8 p.m. on Saturday. It must have happened very quickly, because the first we heard was the ambulance arriving. There was no shouting or anything. It seemed to come out of nowhere, said Dean. We looked out of the window and saw this young guy slumped on the lamppost. The police were saying he was bleeding a lot. It's a quiet area. I've never seen any trouble. We would never have expected an attempted murder right outside our house. We have a young family and it's quite scary. It's made me worry about the safety of the kids. The victim, who has not been named, suffered life-threatening injuries and was airlifted to Southampton General Hospital. Following treatment, his condition was described as stable by a police spokesperson. Police arrested 2 men on suspicion of attempted murder, both from Shanklin. A 43-year-old who was released with no further action taken against him, and a 22-year-old who was released and remains under investigation. Panos Adamo, who has run the nearby Shortcuts barber shop for 10 years, said although he loved living in Shanklin, he was not entirely surprised by the attack. Everyone is talking about it. People are shocked, but also not shocked, said Panos. Shanklin is lovely, it's beautiful with the beach and very friendly, but you hear about this kind of thing all the time now. In the past it might have been just a fight, but things seem to be getting more extreme. I don't know what goes through someone's mind when they pick up a knife. The Mayor of Shanklin, Councillor John Gilby, called for more beat police officers to prevent violent crime. People think of the island as quaint and nice, and nothing like this would happen here, but that's the society we live in, he said. Quite a few young people have no respect, not just for other people but for themselves, and they are not afraid of the police or the consequences of their actions. The police aren't on the streets like they used to be, and I think there is more violent crime because of that.
And Fire Safety is Something on Everyone's Minds by Amy Shepherd. In the light of the recent Grenfell Tower tragedy, fire safety is at the forefront of many homeowners' minds. It is hugely important to make sure your home is properly equipped to deal with a fire. Here are some important points to consider. Make sure you have at least one fire smoke alarm fitted on each level of your home, and that you have it tested within the last month. It only takes a second to do this, but it could save your life. If you live in a block of flats, make sure you fit an alarm inside your home too, even if there is one on the communal landing. Go from room to room, checking for fire hazards, such as candles near clothing or curtains, overloaded plug sockets, or electrical devices, such as hair straighteners, left on. Get into the habit of eliminating these threats every time you leave the house or go up to bed. Where possible, replace standard internal doors with fire doors from a reputable supplier. A fire door can delay both the fire and smoke, which is moving between rooms, giving you more time to plan your escape. Be prepared. It's not nice to have to think about the what-ifs, but in the event of a fire, you'll be glad you did. Plan your escape routes from each room in your house. If you can't see a means of escape anywhere, then consider how you could introduce one. Install escape windows and clear obstructions from doorways to enable your family to get to safety as quickly as possible. Fire safety equipment such as fire extinguishers, fire blankets and escape ladders can be purchased from local hardware stores. Try to ensure you always have a phone nearby so you can call 999 as quickly as possible.
Old boys return for a final look. Scores of former pupils of what was once the Priory Boys Secondary School in Carisbrooke went on a guided tour of their old alma mater before it disappears for good. The school, which is now part of the Carisbrooke College campus, is set to be demolished when the new, smaller school takes shape. The site of the former school is destined to be used for housing. However, the school was opened to great public acclaim when it was officially unveiled by Lord Mottiston on Thursday, September the 29th, 1955. In an official programme for the school's opening 62 years ago, a potted history of the site reveals building work on the kitchen and dining room block was completed in 1953. The second phase of the project contained a practical wing, which consisted of metalwork, woodwork and general practical rooms. Around 70 former pupils, including 4 who were pupils when the school first opened, and the last head boy before it became a comprehensive school in 1970, attended the reunion and tour on Saturday.
And primary school now needs improvement. God's Hill Primary School requires improvement, according to its latest Ofsted report published this week. Just 5 years after the primary school was rated good, an inspector said many aspects now needed to improve. However, early years provision, personal development, behaviour and welfare was still deemed to be good. God's Hill is part of the Stenbury Federation, which also consists of Chillerton and Rookley and Wroxhall primary schools. The schools share 2 executive head teachers and 1 governing body. However, at the time of inspection last month, 1 executive head teacher was leading the schools. It was due to the absence of the partner executive head teacher. In the report's key findings, Ofsted said leadership capacity has been weakened during a period of turbulence. Consequently, leaders had not maintained previously good standards of teaching, learning and assessment across the school. Governors had not acted quickly enough to secure the support needed during this time. Parents were frustrated at poor communications concerning recent changes at the school. Teachers and teaching assistants did not have consistently high expectations of what pupils could achieve. Pupils' misconceptions were sometimes left unchecked, and so they did not realise they had made mistakes. However, it said that pupils' behaviour was good, and they had a positive attitude towards learning. The report also said pupils' pastoral needs were well met, and additional funding was used well. Leaders had ensured pupils who were disadvantaged or had special educational needs and or disabilities were supported well and made good progress. A spokesperson from the Stenbury Federation said it was a thorough and robust inspection process that highlighted areas of strength in the school, as well as areas which need to continue to improve.
Dementia Friends. 50 Specsavers employees in Newport and Ryde have committed to becoming dementia friends in an initiative led by the Alzheimer's Society. Their pledge will make Specsavers the first and only Isle of Wight High Street store to boast an entire complement of dementia friends employees. Those with dementia commonly experience problems with their sight and visual perception. Almost half of those living with dementia in care homes wear glasses with the wrong prescription, leading to increased isolation and confusion. Retail director and dementia friend Catherine Kidd said, "Our primary goal is to ensure each and every employee at both stores feels empowered to be a dementia friend."
And the Antiques Roadshow is actually coming to Osborne. BBC One's Antiques Roadshow will be coming to Osborne House this September. So if you've got household treasures or family heirlooms which have always intrigued you, now is the time to dust them off. This year, the much-loved BBC show is celebrating its 40th anniversary, and as part of the celebrations, presenter Fiona Bruce, together with a team of 30 fine arts and antiques experts, will be arriving at Osborne to offer advice and valuations to islanders. The show will be recorded on Thursday, the 14th of September, between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. It will be free to attend, with no need to pre-book, and the house will be closed to the public for the day. More information about the event can be found at www.bbc.co.uk Antiques Roadshow.
Concern voiced over homes development. Residents in East Cowes have blasted proposals to build more housing in the town because of the added pressure it would put on already stretched services. The plan for 58 homes, 24 of which would be affordable, together with 24 flats for social housing, a new discount supermarket and units for small businesses, with parking bays for school drop-off, on land south of Crossways Road, went on display at East Cowes Town Hall last week. The Isle of Wight Council, which owns the land, commissioned Public Sector plc to look at potential local authority-owned sites for development and to come up with potential uses for Crossways. A social media storm against the plans developed last week, with a petition raised by residents. Phil Salmon of Wootton-based Planning and Development Hub Limited, acting for PSP, said the consultation was purely to look at the site's potential for development. It is a valid point that by having more households in East Cowes, it puts increased pressure on services such as GP practices and dentists, But there's a growing housing need on the island, Mr. Salmon said. At the moment, there are no developers driving any plans forward. Nothing is set in stone. Isle of Wight councillor Julia Baker-Smith said, "In October last year, I delivered 2,000 surveys to residents asking what facilities were needed in the ward. Most respondents wanted a low-cost supermarket, supported housing and parking for school drop-off and pick-up to ease pressure on the town. The views of residents were fed back to the architects, who took them into account with the draft plans. Osborne is a relatively deprived area in comparison to the rest of the island. The overwhelming opinion is people struggle to access affordable food stores and find themselves spending more than they can afford at Waitrose. I've fought hard to prevent another large-scale housing development on the site and to ensure any development fulfills a local need."
And internet lessons to be held at the library. Shanklin Community Library has received £1,000 to teach people how to use the internet. The grant was awarded by the Comic Relief Fund, enabling the library to run classes and support those learning to surf the web. Shanklin Town Councillor and library volunteer Richard Priest said, "We can see the direction we are heading and everything is increasingly online. More people are doing their shopping and banking online, and there is a clear need for classes and support. We may follow with classes on social media. We helped one 97-year-old man use social media to stay in touch with his grandson in Australia, who just had a baby. The lessons are due to start in the autumn."
Cash boost for air ambulance. The Isle of Wight Hunt has donated £800 to the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Air Ambulance. The money was handed over at the Hunt's annual puppy show and lunch at the end of June. The lunch provides an opportunity for Hunt members to thank puppy walkers who prepare the young hounds for life. Air Ambulance trustee Bob Prescott was presented with the money by Anthony Blest, Joint Master of the Isle of Wight Hunt. The money was raised from proceeds of the Biles & Co. Grand National and Ashy Scurry held in March. Each year the Scurry Committee makes a donation to local charity. The ambulance service was chosen in recognition of its importance to the Isle of Wight and horse riders or hunt members in particular, as any accident is likely to be difficult to access in an ordinary ambulance.
So the Solent's reputation as the water playground for the world's billionaires has been reinforced with the arrival of 2 super yachts within the past week. Lady Christina, a 68-metre vessel worth more than $60 million, is currently moored off Cowes. It is understood to belong to Baron Irving Ledlow. There is also a private investor for Portsmouth-based Ben Ainsley Racing. Meanwhile, Yarmouth saw the arrival of the huge Amaryllis, which anchored off the town last Thursday and Friday, and is owned by American billionaire Richard DeVos. The yacht can apparently be chartered at a cost of $770,000 a night. The custom motor yacht was built in 2011 by the German shipyard Abekin and Rasmussen. It is a luxurious super yacht, with both her interior and exterior spaces being designed by the award-winning Raymond Langton Design, and can carry 14 passengers and 19 crew.
Welcome for blood inquiry. Islander Josh Goddard, whose father Kevin, 49, of Ryde, contracted hepatitis C as a result of a contaminated blood transfusion, has been among those calling for answers over many years. Josh welcomed this week's announcement the government was launching an inquiry, following mounting pressure from campaigners, including the Haemophilia Society and Greater Manchester Mayor Andy Burnham, who claims to have evidence of a cover-up. Pressure has been building for the past 20 or 30 years, said Josh. Most people just haven't known about what happened. It's a really hard story to tell. Campaigners will all tell you it is very difficult to criticise the NHS and the government. When things like this happen, it is very hard to get your voice out there, said Josh, 24, who now lives in Twickenham. Someone out there made the decision to put profit before people. Fundamentally, someone needs to take responsibility. These decisions did not just come out of nowhere. Someone needs to be held accountable for this, for the thousands of lives that have already been lost, and the people still dying because of this scandal. Like other victims, Mr. Goddard has been left to fund part of his treatment because the NHS refuses to pay. Speaking during Tuesday's debate in Parliament, Island MP Bob Seeley said among the victims of the scandal was an islander aged just 9. Mr. Seeley said, "I have had residents who have lived with this for decades, including several who have illnesses linked to contaminated blood as young as 9. He also raised the case of a freshwater woman who contracted hepatitis C, which can lead to life-threatening liver problems, who was denied the latest generation of antiviral treatment on the NHS and had been forced to fund it herself. People feel not only did the NHS let them down, it has not provided the support it should have done," said Mr. Seeley. The scandal dates back to the 1970s and 1980s, when people being treated for haemophilia were given transfusions using contaminated blood stocks. Some of the blood had come from drug addicts and prisoners in the USA and had not been properly screened. Campaigners say they have evidence the NHS continued to use the blood after problems were suspected or known about. Any potential criminal elements have to be investigated to their ultimate conclusions, said Mr. Seeley.
And Save Our Schools fight taken to Downing Street. Campaigners battling cuts to school funding on the island delivered their message to Downing Street last Thursday. Save Our Schools Isle of Wight founders Maria Villavine and Catherine Fisher, who both have children at St Thomas of Canterbury, RC Primary School, Carisbrooke, joined crowds of parents, teachers and pupils from schools across the country in Parliament Square. There they heard speeches from comedian Steve Coogan and Green Party leader Dr. Caroline Lucas, supporting the national campaign, Save Our Schools, SOS, before heading for Downing Street. Along the way, protesters sang the police's hit song, Message in a Bottle, while children on the march carried plastic bottles with their own message, opposing educational cuts, addressed to the Secretary of State for Education, Justine Greening. They then assembled outside the gates of Downing Street before their protest was officially conveyed to the Prime Minister, Theresa May. Maria said she was thrilled that letters written by pupils, teachers and parents were delivered to Number 10 by Dr. Lucas. She said ours were among the select few letters actually delivered. We are so proud. There will be a mass letter writing campaign, live music, magic, children and teacher speeches and much more in an event supporting SOS on 13th of August in Newport between noon and 4 p.m. at a venue to be confirmed. For further information about the campaign, visit www.saveourschools.com.
End 10-year wait for beach access. Chale residents have been promised the issue of reinstating access to the beach at Whale Chine will be looked at again. Isle of Wight Council leader, Councillor Dave Stewart, who is also the representative for Chale, made the promise at a meeting of Chale Parish Council. Access steps at Whale Chine have been closed for more than 10 years and fences have been erected by the Isle of Wight Council with signs threatening legal action against anyone who uses the route. The issue was discussed at Chale Parish Council's meeting on Monday, and in a report given on the parish plan questionnaire, Whale Chine was highlighted as the issue local residents most wanted remedied. It was widely agreed at the meeting that, despite the access being fenced off and the threatening signs from the council, people were still using the beach. Chairman Councillor Ron Grove said, "When you have people who really want to get down there, they are going to get down. And if people are going down there, we as an Isle of Wight community should try to make it safe for them." Local resident Dick Downs, attending the meeting, said, "I don't think we would have a hard time getting volunteers down there to cut a new path. If it is just a few blokes with spades, then it shouldn't cost too much either." Councillor Stewart said he would take it back to the Isle of Wight Council and report back. "If it is feasible, the will is there," Councillor Stewart said.
And article by Richard Wright, Tidal Energy Plan in Doubt. The company behind a publicly funded Isle of Wight tidal energy project has admitted the scheme has been put on hold, just a month after claiming it was on schedule to generate 30 MW of electricity by 2020. The future of the scheme was raised at the Isle of Wight Council's Scrutiny Committee by Green Councillor Michael Lively, who has now received a written response from Tory Cabinet member Councillor Michael Merwell. The scheme involves harnessing tidal energy at a site off St Catherine's Point and bringing it ashore at Ventnor. Councillor Lilly said Perpetuous Total Energy, PTEC, into which the Isle of Wight Council pumped £1 million investment, had not bid to government for a ring-fence price for its energy, which it needs to make the project a reality. The company said it did not put in a bid because it knew it would fail against more mature renewables. Councillor Merwell replied, "All dates are in abeyance. PTEC and the industry as a whole are lobbying the government to come up with an alternative financial support scheme to allow this industry to grow beyond its current early development situation. Several avenues are now being explored. The project is ready to go with all relevant permissions in place, although some shore-based planning permissions are under some time pressure. But it would be considered unwise to move on from this point without the financial support mechanism in place." PTEC Chairman Robert Stevens said, "Without government support, the marine energy project could not compete on price. While our project has been delayed, it is still viable and we believe achievable with government support. As we negotiate through Brexit, it is more important than ever to capitalise on the UK's huge tidal resources and technology advantages to expand our renewable energy output to export energy, services and products. This strengthens the UK's negotiating position when it comes to purchasing energy, exiting Europe, and creates jobs and exports and protects the longer-term price of energy," he said.
Town centre relief for loo problems. A creative solution has been found to the lack of public toilets in Newport Town Centre. With the busiest time of year approaching and the South Street public toilets out of action due to a drainage problem, residents and tourists have been finding themselves caught short. However, working in partnership with fast food chain McDonald's, Newport Parish Council revealed on Wednesday there will be a trial of a community toilet scheme for the next 3 months. People will be able to use the McDonald's toilets from Monday without making a purchase, and the Parish Council will cover the costs at £100 per week. Councillor Julie Jones-Evans said, "When the Isle of Wight Council had its previous consultation on community toilets, many businesses were interested. So when the situation with the South Street blockage became apparent, I decided to revisit this idea. As McDonald's is near the bus station and open from early in the morning to late at night, I think this will be a good solution. Radar key disability access is also available within the store." McDonald's South Coast area manager Steve Smith said, "McDonald's is always happy to support community projects, and this is something we were previously interested in getting involved with. The McDonald's trial is set to last for 3 months. Meanwhile, the toilets in Post Office Lane remain open. However, the South Street toilets look set to remain closed in the future, as Newport Parish Council has returned the lease to the Isle of Wight Council.
A music teacher from Ryde has been honoured with a Lifetime Achievement Award from classical radio station Classic FM. The awards recognise those teachers who have made a real difference to the musical lives of young people. Linda Philby Borrett, 64, was chosen from hundreds of applicants and presented with the award by former music teacher and twice Mercury-nominated singer Laura Mavula on stage at London's Barbican, where she was previously a student.
Fun way to raise money. An evening of raucous comedy and fabulous food has raised £4,326 for the Earl Mountbatten Hospice. Organised and hosted by Blackwater comedian Paul St John Martin, the event was held in the hospice's John Cheverton Centre with around 60 people attending. Paul, who sponsored the evening, including the catering, said, "It was an amazing success. The food was fabulous and the atmosphere was brilliant. Most importantly, it was fun. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to help the hospice." Rebecca Block, head of income generation at Earl Mountbatten Hospice, said, "We're very grateful to Paul and all his guests for their generosity and support. The funds raised by the evening will contribute across the many aspects of our work, including our community team, which cares for 650 islanders on any one day in their own homes."
Troublesome terrapins on the move. The much-loved terrapins at Bonchurch Pond have been rehoused after years of mischief. The yellow-bellied sliders and Mississippi map breeds had lived in the pond for around 9 years. Brian Lucas from Bonchurch Community Association arranged for them to be transferred to a private sanctuary in Ryde. "We have been meaning to do this for some time. They're not supposed to be in there," he said. "They eat the little fish and upset the ecology of the pond. Though unable to breed in this country due to climate conditions, the terrapins have grown in numbers over the years as people dump them in the pond." Brian said, "People buy them when they are the size of a 50p piece, and before long they are eating them out of house and home." 5 have been rehoused with Sharon Cooper, who has around 40 terrapins at her sanctuary, and the final 3 will be moved on Monday, though they can be difficult to catch. Brian said they float around like they couldn't care, but then they dive faster than a U-boat. Sharon mainly keeps the terrapins as a hobby, but over 8 years her refuge has grown into a sizable sanctuary. "There's a lot of people who are quite upset they are going," she said. "People from across the island came to look at them because it's not something you see very often."
Library on wheels. Just before they were due to go on their summer holidays, youngsters at St Helens Primary School got their very own double-decker bus. The vehicle was delivered to the school courtesy of parent Russ Jennis, who works for Southern Vectis, which supplied the bus for free. The vehicle spent the last days of its working life ferrying Isle of Wight festival goers from East Cowes to the festival site. It will now be decommissioned and turned into a school library for St Helens. Parents need to raise around £15,000 to refurbish the bus and buy new books. They hope to have the new facility open in December. Head teacher Jane Loader said, "When the bus was driven in, it was an extremely tight fit. Our school building is very small and we are running out of space. Southern Vectis were wonderful. They invited the children over to look at the bus when it was in the depot. When it came to us, it was its last journey under its own steam." The school was also presented with a cheque for £500 by Ryde Lions towards the refurbishment of the bus.
And the police have appealed for witnesses to a confrontation in Ryde High Street, footage which has been viewed more than 800,000 times on Facebook. A police spokesman said shortly after 5:10 p.m, 2 men at the Santander cash point on the High Street were involved in a verbal disagreement which escalated with a man and a woman who were using a mobility scooter. No one was seriously hurt. Police said they were trying to make contact with all those involved. They also appealed for witnesses to get in touch. In the clip, a couple are seen arguing with a younger man who alleges racial abuse. The woman, who got off her mobility scooter, pursues another man, even though she is walking with a crutch. He was recording the incident on his phone. In a foul-mouthed tirade, she accuses him of assaulting her before climbing back into her mobility scooter, scattering high street shoppers. Anyone who has mobile phone footage or who saw what happened can call PC Jason Taylor at Ryde Police Station on 101, quoting 441 702 64775. People can call Crime Stoppers on 0800 555 111, where information can be left anonymously.
Bid to suspend floaty fares again. Passenger charges have been reinstated on the Cowes floating bridge, but 3 Isle of Wight councillors have already proposed they be suspended again. Councillor Carl Love and Councillor Julie Jones-Evans will put a motion before Wednesday's council that all passenger fees be suspended for the foreseeable future. Councillor Julia Baker-Smith has also suggested charges be removed entirely for parents walking their children to school, which she said costs up to £6 per day. She said this presents a potential and unnecessary barrier to low-income families to maintaining school attendance. However, protest group Floaty McFloat Farce condemned the council's suggestion the bridge was fully operational. The group claims floating bridge number 6 has failed to meet the strategic objectives laid out by part funders Solent Local Enterprise Partnership, which included reduced queuing times, more crossings, improved passenger accommodation and energy efficiency. A statement from the group said, "No word as to when the bridge will not only be truly fully operational, but also when it will meet or exceed all of the outcomes as identified by the LEP." A council spokesperson said, "Following the recent low tide, pedestrian-only operation of the floating bridge service, the floating bridge returned to full operational service on Saturday from 5 a.m, as per its normal scheduled timetable. Wednesday's council meeting starts at 6 p.m. at County Hall."
And the need for developers to build the type of housing in which an increasingly ageing population could continue to live independently was stressed by the Isle of Wight Council's Scrutiny Committee. It said the Cabinet should reinforce the need for fit-for-purpose housing and for the authority to carefully assess the capability of the care and accommodation providers.
So that's all from us for today. So it's goodbye from Madeline.
And goodbye from Barry, and we hope that this nice weather continues and you have a very enjoyable weekend.
And now a change of voices from
Anne
and from Peter Boffin. And here's the letter from Nick Liston, Diest, Belgium. He's written to the local paper. "I am a passionate hobbyist concerning the history of the First and Second World Wars. Following my passion, I've adopted several war graves here in Belgium, France and the Netherlands. Adopting a grave doesn't mean you have to take care of it, just that you lay flowers at the grave at least once a year. Most of the graves are American, but 2 are British. One of my British adoption graves is the grave of William John Buckingham of the Middlesex Regiment. His mother lives in 12 Victoria Road, Newport, on the Isle of Wight, and his name is commemorated on the memorial to the missing in the Tynecott Cemetery in Belgium. I'm now trying to find relatives of him to let him know that I will keep on remembering William John Buckingham as long as I can, and maybe ask more information about him, how and what he did before the war, where he fought, and stuff like that. and maybe one day meet at his grave to lay flowers together. I have not got much information about him, but what I have is on my webpage, which is http at nickbacklefield.com/eng/Buckingham.php. So that's good luck to you. It'll be great if the county press could help me and to find relatives or more information or pictures about the soldier who died for our freedom. So there.
The letter of the week comes from A. Gates of Newport. I would like to say a big thank you to the county press for advertising our recent Priory Boys School final tour and for sending a photographer. It was a great day with more than 60 people attending the tour. I would also like to thank the Ambassador Club at Gunville for putting on a lovely buffet which rounded off a great day. Plenty of great memories were talked about all day, including the appearance of one of our teachers, Terry Mitchell. Finally, a big thank you to Keith Lane and Derek Palmer for helping me to organise it.
And here's a letter from a Mrs. Susan Trianfo of Bryston. And she says, as a business owner in Cowes for the past 21 years, I'd like to say it is not only East Cowes that is suffering with the debacle of the chain ferry. Within the past year, Cowes has endured a 2-month plus closure of the main road into the town from Newport. And the same stretch of road is closed again as I write. The closure of all the banks and the back of the post office in the town, almost 5 months without the chain ferry, and now with a very limited service of same. Because of the lack of all these services and road disruption, businesses are struggling greatly or closing down. Indeed, if it wasn't for my husband's state pension, we wouldn't be able to keep our business going either. This isn't helped by the competition we have as a coffee shop. When we first set up shop in Cowes, there were 4 places you could get coffee. Now there's more than 30. Having worked hard all our lives and married for 40 years, we are now worse off than we've ever been. So please, East Cowes, don't think you're the only ones blighted by the pathetic chain ferry. West Cowes is also suffering big time. And Paul Hort from Thresholder says, on the subject of naming the new Cowes Spoking Bridge, the name White Elephant seems appropriate.
Here is a letter from Jane Mills of Luckham. I read with interest MP Bob Seeley's maiden speech, setting out his vision for the island. Whether you agree with his utopia or not, it is essential those in power articulate what they believe, as it is against these aspirations that they can be judged. His speech was also very timely, and that the island appears to be very much on a crossroads. As a community, we need to decide what sort of an island we want, and nowhere is that choice starker than in the unlikely setting of Bridlesford Road. Here, within an area of outstanding natural beauty, we have a skirmish in which Robin Hill finds itself pitted against its noisy neighbour, Westridge Waste. It is a classic confrontation, order against disorder, planned versus the unplanned, suitable development against the unsuitable. It seems inconceivable that a successful established attraction like Robin Hill could have its latest proposal for eco-lodges threatened by unapproved and apparently unfettered adjacent development. How is it that a waste plant on an industrial scale has been allowed to fester across the protected landscape in such an uncontrolled and inappropriate fashion? Indeed, the Isle of Wight Council has a defining planning issue to determine in respect of Westridge Waste, as the application embodies other existential considerations. Do we want to support a business that has developed innovative proposals in consultation with the relevant authorities and in accordance with due planning process, or are we going to allow these to be scuppered by a neighbouring operation that has not? Do we want to encourage sustainable tourism for an ever more discerning visitor, or do we favour conflicting development, in this case turning this wider area into a giant landfill? Do we think the island's natural heritage is worth protecting? Quite literally, this application represents a tipping point for the island. I hope planners exercise their judgment accordingly.
And here's a letter from J. Gibbons of Ryde, who had an accident, and says, on June 19th at the corner of Melville Street and Vernon Square, I tripped and fell, diving headfirst into a stone wall. It was a spectacular performance and deserved full marks for any passing judge. A flow of blood resulted, and a concerned woman offered to accompany me home. And a passing motorist was also sufficiently impressed to stop and take me on board. To these people and to the nurse at the Ring Street doctor's surgery, who shortly afterwards quickly and competently bandaged me up, I offer my thanks. No great damage was done, either to me or to the wall. So there.
P. Nettleton of Ryde has written about Ryde School. In 2011, Ryde School, against the wishes of the Isle of Wight Council and local residents, built the ultra-modern Queen's Road entrance foyer. Ryde School now wishes to build an ugly utilitarian 3-storey boarding house, more akin to a budget hotel, on the northern edge of its site, within the Ryde Conservation Area. This new boarding house is to help facilitate withdrawing boarders from their current Bembridge site before that is put on the market. This 3-storey building, with a planned 68 bedrooms, is oversized in relation to its immediate surroundings and totally out of character with the Ryde Conservation Area, with its many Grade 2 listed buildings. It would be visible from many directions and would materially change the view of Ryde from the sea. However, despite many objections, the newly formed Ryde School Construction Limited appears determined to force this through with minimal alterations. Furthermore, if this goes ahead, the new boarders will no longer have a 100-plus acre site in which to explore and relax away from the confines of school. Instead, they will be restricted to a very small site with few facilities. So in one move, Ryde School has the potential to alienate residents, adversely affect the local environment, and negatively impact future generations of boarders. This project looks more like a C- than an A+.
And here's another letter about schools. This is from Malcolm Garbutt of Waterlooville. It says, I was so shocked to hear of the state of the now Sandown Bay Academy. So much for standards and progress. When I attended the old Fairway Secondary Modern, 1959 to 1963, I had a sound and excellent education. The teachers were first class and knew what they were doing. I was not the sharpest tool in the box, but if I lagged behind, I was helped. We had a metalwork teacher called Mr. Holt, who helped me a lot. So I was very interested in the subject, and I found this useful in later years as I became a machine setter in a large engineering factory and ended up running my own section. I cannot believe such a great school can go downhill like this. So much for fancy titles. Academy, my backside. If it's not broken, do not try to mend it. I wonder if any of the old pupils have the same opinion as me, if any of them are still around.
And D. Kent of Lake has written a letter about chips. When we had fish and chips before the war, the chips were nice, deep brown and a lovely flavour. Nowadays they are an insipid colour and have an off-putting smell of modern cooking oils. I would like to find someone who is still using the old frying fats. Also, in Shanklin Regent Street, there was a shop that sold only faggots and peas, where you took your own bowl and they filled it with faggots and peas for a shilling. Give us back the good old days. And the editor has written a footnote to this letter. The Happy Haddock in Shanklin featured in our Weekender food and drink features recently, and they told us they cook chips in beef dripping.
And here's a short little letter from a Brian Shaw of Newport, who says, I see Red Funnel claiming to be the fastest around the island. I'm sure in the late 1960s a powerboat called Surf Fury 111, which was built in Cowes at Souters for the Gardner brothers, circumnavigated the island in just under an hour. And this leaves Red Jet with some catching up to do. So there you are, Red Jet.
Now we're going to be looking back. 100 years ago, July the 14th, 1917. With the government having commandeered wool throughout the country under the Defence of the Realm Act, Ireland flockmasters were, for the second time that season, denied the opportunity of submitting their clips to public competition. Representatives from the government, along with assistance from Ireland auctioneers, inspected the clips for mandatory sale. The auctioneers lamented the farmers were victims of circumstance. And also 100 years ago, a food economy exhibition at East Cowes Town Hall, under the auspices of the local War Savings Association, attracted zealous interest, drawing large crowds. At the opening ceremony, Chairman Mr. J. Taylor enforced the duty of economy in order we might be able to help our brothers who are fighting for us in the trenches.
And 75 years ago, on July the 11th, 1942, Battery Sergeant Major R.T. Lorne, who before being called up at the outbreak of the war worked in the machine department of the county press, wrote home from Tobruk. During the last year, which I have spent out here, I have had numerous hours of enjoyment reading the county press. Its contents are read and reread by not only by myself, but by other personnel of the battery who spent several happy months on the island and still take an interest in the districts where they were quartered. And also 75 years ago, a county court judge was fined £1, that's £43 in today's money, for failing to lock his car doors when he left the vehicle in Yarmouth Square. A witness found the car unlocked and was told the judge had crossed to the mainland on the ferry. And the judge said, to the best of his knowledge, he had locked the doors.
50 years ago, July the 15th, 1967. Allegations were made by Captain J. Riddett. The transfer of West Wight's mail sorting to Newport was not done to improve the service, but to increase the status of Newport Post Office. Parish Council Chairman H.C. Chandler said such allegations seemed ridiculous, but conceded a noticeable decline in service, having posted a letter at 8:30 a.m, and it did not reach Newport until the following day. And also, 6 people had to be rescued off the coast of Bembridge after their yacht was destroyed in a collision with a Japanese vessel. The incident occurred as the 2 ships were navigating thick fog in the small hours of the morning.
And 25 years ago, that's July the 11th, 1992, the Medina Council came under fire from Isle of Wight Labour for failing to enforce Sunday trading laws for stores such as Safeway and B&Q. Party press officer Ken Pearson said it was hypocrisy to allow a breach of such laws while simultaneously taking swift action, including jailings against poll tax defaulters. And Council Leader Michael Fletcher said, "We are conscious of the fact many families appreciate shopping on Sundays, while at the same time acknowledging the problems caused to people who are obliged to work." And also, 25 years ago, a bitter dispute between fishermen and Ely Enterprise over oil exploration activities off the West Wight finally came to an end, with all but one of the 19 fishermen accepting £4,000 in compensation. But Jim Richards, spokesman for the Isle of Wight Commercial Fishermen's Association, said his members agreed to the deal only very reluctantly. For compensation to be a fair reflection of what we are losing in fish catches, it would have to be twice what was on the table, he said.
10 years ago, July the 13th, 2007. The moratorium designed to stop new mobile phone masts on Isle of Wight Council land remains in force, despite it appearing not to be. Plans for 2 3G masts that stirred huge opposition in Ryde and Binstead were on council land, but the authority explained there was nothing they could do about them. Isle of Wight Director of Regeneration and Development, Bernadette Marjoram, said the moratorium on allowing new mobile phones on Isle of Wight Council land is still in effect. However, bodies, including telecommunication companies, have statutory powers to erect phone masts on land classified as highways. And 10 years ago, an arson attack on a coach in Sandown nearly ended in devastation. Driver Mark Pearson said the flames engulfed his 53-seater coach parked behind Hotel Maria and could have spread to the building where 45 guests were staying. It was only a matter of luck that it didn't. The coach was parked right up against the hotel with 60 gallons of fuel on board, so the consequences could have been horrendous. And there was a gas boiler behind the wall, so the whole thing could have gone up.
And now, Wight Memories. And there's it's about the floating bridge, number 2, in 1925. If the subway had been built, Brian Greening considers how the latest floating bridge would not have been necessary if history had taken a different turn. My visits to East and West Cowes are as rare as hen's teeth, largely because as a Newport-born Barton bonehead, I got a nosebleed if I travel more than a mile from the town's boundaries. Therefore, I have remained aloof from the floating bridge furore, but it did call to mind my past research of the time when there was plans instead to construct a 2-way tunnel. Without doubt this would have been something that Queen Victoria would have approved, because she had been known to complain of having to wait at East Cowes while the ferry was brought across. This was for a journey she made to celebrate 50 years of her reign en route to Prince's Green, where great efforts had been made for her to be welcomed by the local great and the good. The tunnel plan was a story my good friend Bill Shepherd and I put into one of our books. As a result of a special Act of Parliament, entitled the Medina Subway Act 1884, a company was set up to put this idea into practice. It was explained in the prospectus the traffic between the two towns was by means of a steam chain ferry and ferry boats, which were quite inadequate to meet the local inhabitants' requirements. The steam ferry, we were told, ceased running at 9 p.m. in the winter and 10 p.m. in the summer, and after these times all carriages were compelled to travel via Newport, thereby adding 9 miles to the journey instead of traversing the 142 yards across the river. And it was further stated many passengers opted for the longer route in preference to trusting their horse and carriages on the ferry boats. And the prospectus went on to state the construction of the proposed subway was an urgent necessity and had the support of both towns' local boards. The length of the subway beneath the Medina would have been 428 feet, with approaches on both sides of more than 500 feet. And the height of the tunnels would be sufficient to admit the passage of a 4-horse-drawn coach, and there would be ample room for foot passengers. The subway would be open night and day, and the additional numbers of visitors to the resorts would greatly add to the prosperity of them. It would further aid the development of residential property on the East Cowes side, something that was stifled by the then mode of transport, and the contract had been entered into with a responsible company from Cardiff, and construction was planned to take 18 months and cost £43,000. The Medina Subway Company simply sought public subscription, proposing to issue 6,000 shares of £10 each. The directors included company chairman, the Right Honourable Viscount Gort of East Cowes Castle, and Mr. Chatfield Clark of Wootton Common. Today that account seems quite wonderful, but the idea of a Solent tunnel never came to fruition. By 1889 it was still not being started, though it was reported the idea had not been abandoned. And the question was still being asked, where was the funding, about £4.3 million in today's money, going to come from? Much like the Solent tunnel. It was said if the floating bridge ran on time, there would be no need for the tunnel, but passengers often had to wait about almost 20 minutes. That the scheme finally died a death is now history. Queen Victoria was, however, given the advantage of other modern technology. In 1888, she was provided with a local telephone link. That meant a cable had to be laid across the River Medina close to the floating bridge. And a court case arose, however, when a timber barge broke the cable and the owner was ordered to pay £39 for the damage. But as part of the old cable's salvage, the sum was reduced to just under £30. That's about £3,600 in today's money. So that's what happened when they were trying to get from east to West Cowes and back again.
Here is an article by Matt Chatfield. He heads it, "We Can't Love Hedgehogs and Hate Slugs." It's encouraging to see the island's adopted wildlife celebrity, Chris Packham, gamely fighting off national treasure status. At a time in his career when a lesser man might consider embarking on the cruise ship lecture circuit and maybe settling down to a bit of light book signing, Packham is still out there causing controversy by saying and doing the things that most television naturalists eschew. Who was it who said he would eat the last panda? Yes, Packham, in brilliantly scathing form. His unavoidable point, of course, was it's too late for panda survival, but not for some other things. Then, in April, there was that business with the Maltese songbird hunters. For years, earnest and dryly scientific debates had been trundling on, while the Maltese still go out to illegally blow hundreds of thousands of birds from the skies. Packham typically hits Malta with a camera crew and manages not only to get arrested, but also to get video evidence of the hunters and the police roughing him up. So escape penalty and makes what is fairly distant and abstract story into a very live and real bit of news. Hardly the safe and responsible role model we'd expect of the presenter of kids' favourite, The Really Wild Show. Or is this rather a direct and honest approach to wildlife campaigning we should encourage? I think so. So hold on to your hats, gardeners, because our boy has got a blindingly obvious point about hedgehogs to make that some of you are not going to like. I was made aware of this when I visited the bungalow of some retired relatives last month and had the tour around the garden. The pristine beds and immaculate lawn, complete with mini putting course, were a credit to the gardener's industry. The edging? Well, as a former parks manager, I can assure you the diligent application of a half-moon spade still can bring a nod of appreciation. But the prize exhibit was a brace of hedgehog houses. Yes, home-built, custom hedgehog houses with drain pipe entrances, slate roofs, removable viewing covers, even house numbers. But despite this, the hedgehog architect explained he'd never seen a hedgehog in his garden, not once. Perhaps no surprise, because there would be nothing for them to eat. As Chris Packham has been explaining recently, an important part of the diet of hedgehogs is slugs and snails. And if, as diligent gardeners, we kill them all, we can hardly be surprised when the hedgehogs we profess to love so much keep declining. Packham has urged gardeners to put yourself in the mind of the slug and become tolerant towards them. Here on the island we're already halfway there with such a high proportion of gardens. The many gardeners of the garden aisle can really make a difference. So if you love to see hedgehogs, take Packham's challenge and leave room for a few slugs and snails in your garden.
That would be nice. And Jake Harrison, he's got some views. He says, if you're seriously thinking of rehoming your first pet, well done and good luck to you. Providing an animal with a warm and friendly home is a beautiful thing, and it can be very rewarding. However, it can also be highly stressful. So, before you stock up on scratching posts and prodigious amounts of pedigree chum, I'd like to give you some useful advice. Last week we rehomed our first ever pet, a dog called Rolo. He's a Dachshund Strauss and Dalmatian cross with a rather long body, short stubby legs and a large head. His dad was once a rather small but ambitious German who fell in love with a spotty Croatian, so, thankfully, relations were pretty good between the two. Now, when I say first ever pet, I should point out that we do already have a Syrian hamster, but no disrespect to the little man. This new one can actually do proper pet things and isn't asleep for 23 hours a day. And despite producing the kind of smells that would make a maggot in a dustbin weep and leaking more times than a faulty tap washer, we are pleased to finally have the mischievous mutt home. However, getting him home wasn't so easy, and it took many days of toil, stress, arguments, paperwork, and petrol. So I'd like to offer some words of wisdom to anybody thinking of rehoming a pet from the RSPCA. Now, 1, be open-minded. The RSPCA God's Hill has quite a few animals to choose from, and there are many folders packed with photos and information on a range of pets available. From the cute and fluffy cats who would waste not a second in scratching your eyes out, to the dustbin-bellied bow-wows who gaze at you lovingly, thinking or hoping you're a sizzling sirloin steak on legs and wishing they could devour you with a pinch of salt and a side order of chips. So the first bit is a pretty easy, really. You're spoiled for choice. And 2, be prepared for mountains of paperwork. This can be very tedious because you have to sign over every little detail about your name, address, phone number, shoe size, sexual orientation, and your views on Donald Trump's immigration policies. This is all compulsory, or the RSPCA will get suspicious and immediately deem you unfit to even look at a pet. But be warned, your wrists will ache and your mental state will slowly deteriorate. So, best of luck. And 3, don't stress about the dreaded home check. You have to be a knife-wielding, hound-haunting lunatic with a house full of taxidermy not to pass. And unless you are, you'll sail through just fine, even if you do own a Chinese restaurant with a passion for sweet and sour spaniel with extra chow main chihuahua. And 4 is be prepared, but don't buy too many toys. My partner went a bit OTT weeks before we even had a damn dog. We had its bed, blankets, toys, which are a complete waste of time, just a tennis ball will do, and far too much food and drink. But it does help to be a little prepared. So if you're not running around pets at home in a panic at the last minute. And 5, it pays to get a good pet insurance. In the unlikely event your pet decides to fling itself in front of a moving car, you need good cover. We have decided to go with Pet Plan, which covers everything from a broken nail to Rolo's head falling off. So that's highly recommended. And 6, remember, a dog is for life, not just for Facebook. A pet is a living, breathing animal, not a handbag accessory for social media. No one wants to see the same pictures of your dog doing its business in the same field 4 or 5 times a day. You will also need to be responsible and ensure your alarm is always firmly set for 6 a.m. for the morning walk, which can be the most boring and antisocial part of the day. Nobody wants to converse with their loathsome neighbours at that time of the morning. Also, make sure that you are well equipped with doggy doo-doo bags. Our boy Rolo has a tendency to go for a number 2 at least 3 times in the morning and twice in the evening. The boy's a machine. And 7, it's all worth it in the end. If all goes well and you make it thorough, I wish you nothing but pure joy and happiness. You'll spend some of the best years of your life with your new friend, from walks in the park to the comical outfits you'll dress it in. A newly homed animal will bring many moments of laughter and entertainment until they throw up on your high heels or rip chunks out of your prized chaise longue. Finally, I'd like to end on a positive note and thank all of the staff at the RSPCA's God's Hill for their help, support and brilliant advice. Thank you for putting up with us. If you're reading this, then I'd like to say Rolo is coming on in leaps and bounds and couldn't be happier. They say when you adopt an animal, you adopt for life, and that's true. Just don't contemplate ending yours in the process.
Behind the news. Carnival season is here again, and the island's favourite summer tradition will be back this year, bigger and better than ever. The traditional parades rely on coins in buckets and the goodwill of the community to survive, rather different from the island's two professional carnival arts companies, which have recently been, between them, awarded £500,000 from the Arts Council. This money benefits the traditional island carnival scene as well, though, as skills learned from the new professionals, shade makers and the new carnival company, enlivens the old-timers on the block. Carnival organisers around the island plan to add new verve and vigour to events that have their roots in Victoriana, when entertainment was thin on the ground. In those days you had to make your own or it didn't happen. At Isle of Wight Pride on Saturday, posters and banners will reach out to those visiting the town, imploring a return later in the summer for the carnival. Rides Parade will come at the end of the season that kicks off in Newport next Saturday, July 22nd. The gulf between old and new funding is graphically illustrated by this statistic. Last year, Ride Carnival's collection tins for their main and illuminated carnivals contained 19,442 pennies. It sounds and weighs a lot, and it takes a fair bit of counting, but £500,000 it is not. The maths will tell you it's almost £200. Make no mistake, carnival organisers were grateful for it. However, they do point out that had the bronze been 5p pieces, they would have raised an extra £777. It seems the tradition of giving children a bag of coppers to put in the collection tins has remained unchanged for decades, dating from a time when coppers were actually worth something. It may not sound like big beans, but bear in mind, these free events, while they may be organised by people doing it for joy or providing entertainment, some of it does come at a price. Just one example, bands don't march on empty pockets. A movement to add more life to Carnival is gathering pace with the collaboration between Ryde, Sandown and Ventnor. They hope will grow to encompass all the parades. The Gibbs family, who operate a number of pubs around the island, has stepped up to the plate with the Essence of Carnival Award. Cash prizes of £125, £50 and £25 to encourage more people to enter the three carnivals. Newport's main carnival kicks things off the season, and over the following 6 weeks there will be 17 different processions in 7 towns and villages. It is a very special island tradition that has managed to survive for 129 years, from the very first carnival in Ryde in 1888, reputed as the oldest in the whole of the UK, although the number of towns and villages involved has dwindled over the years. Organisers of the parade say they all have one thing in common. It is the support of communities that keeps Carnival alive. The businesses that provide financial help by advertising in the Carnival programmes, providing raffle prizes and discounted or free materials for the Carnival Queen's floats, or people just joining in with initiatives like the window spotting competition run in many towns, all make a positive difference. So too do the townspeople who come along to the fundraising events and buy raffle tickets and carnival programmes, and of course with the carnival participants themselves. The individual performers, the groups of friends and families, remember the Ghostbusters from last year who attended many if not all the carnivals, the schools, youth organisations and many other groups like the White Strollers and the Ventnor Comic Jazz Band. They all come together to have fun and entertain us. Wight Carnival Association Chairman Liz Allen said, "Our Carnival Queen's team of 15 boys and girls will be performing in all the island carnivals this year, and we are hoping the Spider-Man band performing at our illuminated carnival on September the 2nd will attract more spectators. We are piloting a garden in a wheelbarrow competition, which Busy Bees has sponsored, with prize vouchers totalling £175. Ventnor Carnival Association's Teresa Preston and her counterpart in Ryde and Sandown praised the essence of carnival prizes, which she hoped would boost entries. We have a very traditional carnival in Ventnor, which has been running since 1889. It is run by a small committee which works incredibly hard throughout the year to raise the money to put on a successful event for a week. We want to see our carnival continue, with more people taking part, more volunteers and people popping some silver in the collection buckets. We hope carnivals will continue for years to come." Sandown Carnival's chairman Ben Holbrook said, "We have been doing carnivals in Sandown for nearly 130 years, and we want to see the tradition continue. Starting with our Carnival Quiz Night on July 23rd, we have an action-packed calendar for everyone this summer. There's a car treasure hunt, window spotting, family sports, live music with the likes of Derek Sandy, and of course our fantastic children's main and illuminated parades. We hope people come along and support us. Without that, the island's carnivals will most certainly wither and die, as they have in so many other places."
And now, here are the various things that are what's on. On Friday the 28th of July, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Bedina Leisure Centre Field, Fairley Road, Newport, children and young people with disabilities and or their additional needs for their families. There's free parking, no booking is required, and everything is free. And there's going to be some short breaks, a fun and information day, free activities and entertainment, a falconry show, balloon modelling, magic shows, meet a bat with the Isle of Wight Bat Hospital, and much, much more. That's Friday the 28th of July from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
How about a dream late summer trip to Downton Abbey? Explore further afield in comfort with Isle of Wight Tours. The company was recently named Best UK Tour Operator for Groups at the Group Travel Awards, so you'll be in good hands. Choose a short holiday or a day tour, and bookings are now being taken for Christmas trips. Visit Highclere Castle, home of Downton Abbey, on August the 30th. This stunning 19th century architectural masterpiece is set in almost 1,000 acres of parkland. With over 200 rooms, it remains the part-time residence of the Earl and Countess of Carnarvon, and their long-standing friend Julian Fellows has modelled the fictional Grantham estate on Highclere, after visiting the property on numerous occasions. Afternoon tea is served on the coach on your return, topping off a wonderful day. On August the 31st is a day trip to Butler's Hard Maritime Museum in the New Forest, incorporating a river cruise. The museum gives an insight into the history of the 18th century shipbuilding village, focusing on its vessels, including replica timber-framed shipwright workshops built using traditional methods. Attracting huge crowds, the Eastbourne International Air Show is a fantastic spectacle, and Isle of Wight Tours is running a 3-day trip from August the 18th. The air show boasts a 2-mile flying display line along the seafront and features the very best in military and civilian aviation. Display teams including the Red Arrows, Typhoon and the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. Present at the show are the Royal Air Force, the Royal Navy, the Royal Marines and the British Army, and there is plenty of entertainment on the Airborne Live Beach stage. You will be staying in the Imperial Hotel, located in the middle of the promenade, so you couldn't be better placed to get out and see all the action. On September 18th, a 5-day holiday leaves for Shropshire, the Black Country and Arne Bridge. The tour gives an insight into the heritage, culture and stories of times past, with interesting attractions included such as Black Country Living Museum, the Blist Hill Victorian Town Museum, and the trip incorporates a day in Ludlow with a visit to the castle. The Jersey Summer Explorer is a 6-day holiday leaving on September the 3rd, including a scenic full-day tour of the island. Other excursions can also be booked, including Jersey War Tunnels, Durrell Wildlife, the Country Driver Tour, and a day trip to St Malo in France.
And there's more fun, free, at Calbourne Village Fete. That's on Saturday the 22nd of July, and it goes on from 12:30 to 4 p.m. It's at Westhover House, Calbourne. And the sounds of the 40s of the Swing Band, Company B, arena games, fun dog show, there's many side stalls, there's beer and pims, barbecue, teas, and family fun at traditional prices. There's a free entry and free parking, and the number 7 bus, Ask for the Sun Inn. And also, on the 23rd of July, that's Sunday, at the Apollo Theatre in Newport, the Jazz at the Apollo. The Newport Jazz Club presents the internationally known classical and jazz flautist Kate Kusner and leading British saxophonist Tony Woods, accompanied by the Phoenix Trio. That's Sunday the 23rd of July, and it's on from 3 till 5:30 p.m, and the ticket prices are £12 or £5 for students. And they're obtainable from 730-601 or 523-879 and on the door if available. That's at the Apollo in Pyle Street. And of course, Shanklin Theatre in Shanklin. There's all sorts of things on in July. Show Waddy Waddy, Spotlight Show in Saturday the 15th of July. Then there's the Best of the West End and Beyond. That's on Wednesday the 19th, Thursday the 20th, and Wednesday the 26th, and also Thursday the 27th. And then Joe Pasquale, the well-known comedian, who comes on Friday the 28th, and on the Sunday the 30th of July, One Night of Elvis, from Les Memphis King. So there's all sorts of things going on over this month.
And on Sunday, July 22nd, there is the Rookley Village Show from 12 noon, with melodic choir, fun dog show, bungee run, Egyptian dancers, magicians, classic games, vintage cars and tractors, bouncy castles, Morris dancers, and the horticultural marquee. So that's the 22nd of July. And also on the 23rd of July, there is a country fair at Northwood House in Cowes, and the programme of events includes a variety of pipe bands, Scottish dancing, etc. In the main arena, gates open at 10 a.m.
Yes, and that's it. All the exciting things that are happening here on the island in this month.
So that's all we have time for today. So it's goodbye from Anne.
And it's goodbye from Peter. Goodbye.
Bye.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter Wight. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Moving house is tough at the best of times. Finding the right place, finding the right price. But if you're visually impaired, you can add to that, coping with the print paperwork, the inevitable chaos of moving out and moving in again, and, some of our listeners have been telling us, a nasty whiff of discrimination as well. Well, in a moment we'll be hearing about some of those problems and about your legal rights to counter them. But we're also celebrating the more comforting side of home, the now popular again art of baking, thanks to the success of a certain BBC television series. Well, our studio guest today is Penny Melville Brown. Now, Penny has won a $25,000 Holman Prize. It's given by the San Francisco Lighthouse for the Blind, and it'll take her around the world. But she's brought those skills to the In Touch studio first. Penny, this is a short programme and we've set you a challenge. Tell us what you're going to make.
Well, I thought I'd do tiramisu, but just a cheats one because it's a really easy version.
Right, so how much have you had to cheat?
Well, I have taken out the eggs and the sabayon type of aspect. So this is cream, mascarpone, sponge fingers and booze. And that's a jolly good combination.
What was the toughest thing about carrying on baking and making things when you lost your sight, which was back in the 90s?
I was lucky because I lost my sight over a period. I think one adapts, and finding temperatures actually, whether things are done. So I now use a speaking thermometer, which I got from America, and that is invaluable. And I've got my talking scales, and I have my little voice pen that sort of tells you what things are. So finding things, that can be really boring, trotting around a kitchen for hours trying to find the turmeric or something like that.
And you're actually trying to do this on a pretty small table, aren't you? Is that an advantage? At least you can't lose stuff, can you?
It's an advantage for me because I don't have to clear up.
Someone else will do that. The producer, no doubt. And we'll talk more about the background to the Holman Prize and what you're going to do with it later on.
Thanks.
And while Penny knocks up her tiramisu, I'm sure I shouldn't have said that, let's get to the business of finding a home to make it in. I'm also joined by Danielle Burgess from the Isle of Wight and Ben Rendell from Worcester. Now, both of whom have recently been grappling with the housing market and not having a great time of it either. Danielle, you're renting at the moment, but you're looking around for something else to rent. How's it going?
It's going okay. Actually, this morning, the property we were after has actually been confirmed that we will be able to have it. But up until that point, it's been quite stressful.
Right, so we do a programme about problems and you solve your problem on the morning of the programme.
Yes,
well,
exactly.
That's good for you. I mean, what sort of difficulties, though, have you been encountering?
Well, initially, trying to find somewhere, because I'm renting, so it was looking online. Now, because of my sight impairment, I can't do that very easily, so I've had to rely greatly on my partner and carer to look at details, to describe rooms, to describe where the houses are going to be or the accommodation, where it is going to be located.
And what about the business of actually going round them? How easy is it for you to assess how suitable they are for you?
It is a problem. I'm having to rely on someone else to give me a very good description of what I'm going to come across in terms of room sizes, stairs, etc.
Now, part of the frustration must be that you can do this, don't you? You've done it before when you could see better.
Exactly, yes. So, 6 years ago when I moved from the mainland to the Isle of Wight, yes, I was able to do it with a little bit of help. But now I'm totally reliant on my partner and carer to help me.
What would help you more? And I mean, clearly, if there is someone to help, that makes a difference. But in terms of how you get the information and what the people who are actually selling or renting could do, are there things that would make it easier?
Well, I suppose if there was a bit more time. I realise that rental properties come and go very quickly, but if we had a bit more time to have a look at the property, maybe even have a second viewing, just so that get in your head where exactly things are.
Let me bring in Ben Rendell, who's joining us from Worcester. Now, you've just bought a flat recently, I think. Both you and your partner are visually impaired. So when it came to choosing the flat you wanted, what kind of problems did you face?
Well, it was mainly similar problems like accessing, photos, because that seems to be the main focus of a lot of when you're looking online and stuff. It's pictures of this and that, and then it's being able to get to the places to view them. Because obviously, if you don't know where a place is or you're unfamiliar with it, being able to access that location to then go and view it, and then obviously getting the help from the person who's taking you around to, because some of them are just a bit cautious about helping you because of health and safety and that sort of thing.
Is it health and safety, or is it that they don't know quite how to do it, or is it that that's not my job?
I think they're scared of doing something wrong and getting into trouble for it, basically. I don't think there's any rule that says they can't do it. They just don't know what to do and they're scared, really. And that's as simple as that.
Were there more things that you could have maybe either done for yourself or asked them to do? I'm thinking, for example, of, tactile models, maybe, enlarging floor plans, that sort of thing.
Yeah, tactile model would have certainly helped because we bought, in the end, we ended up buying off plan, so it hadn't even been built yet. So there wasn't actually actually a physical location we could actually go and touch and feel and that sort of thing. So a tactile model would have helped, because they had lots of plans and lots of drawings, but they didn't help me. I mean, I was fortunate to have a good friend who is very good at describing things, but had I not had that, it would have made my decision very difficult.
But you have made a decision and you have bought?
Yeah, we have. I mean, fortunately, in the end, they were able to show us round a home that was similar, not the same, but similar. So it did give us an idea of what we were getting.
Right. What's the biggest problem you've found? Danielle first.
Well, when we've looked at sites online, or should I say my partner has looked at sites online, and we've thought, oh yes, that's a possibility. When we've gone to phone the agent, they've turned around and said, oh no, that's already gone, or it's under application. And we have actually gone to the trouble of registering with all these agents. So we sort of think that we are on a register. So as soon as a property comes available, we would be getting a phone call. But that doesn't happen. We end up having to phone them. And by the time the property has come online, we found that it's gone.
Right. So that in a way also, very directly related to your visual impairment, because you'd see it otherwise.
Yes,
Ben, what about you?
Yeah, so its biggest problem is estate agents, because they don't necessarily understand your needs, and it's them communicating those needs to the landlord. And by the time that they've done that, often, someone else has come along for the property, and it just seems easier for the estate agent to say yes to that other person, and then by the time that's happened, other properties that you liked have gone, and it's a pace thing really as well. I think you have to be very quick in the rental market.
Yes, you do. They go very, very quickly, and especially in a small area as well, a small town.
Well, just before we get some answers to those points, Penny Melville Brown is sitting at her makeshift studio work surface here. We're not going to lie and deceive people and pretend you're doing all that from scratch, but you've what would you have had to done to get this to the state that it is now?
Well, I've beaten up the mascarpone in the cream and the amaretto. So now I'm just dipping these really very sharp, crisp biscuits into a mixture of very strong coffee and amaretto. I'm going to lay them down on a tray, whap some cream onto the top of it, do another few layers like that, and finished off with a cream layer. So it's very quick, very simple. Ideally, it should go into a fridge for an hour or so just to firm up. But I don't think we're going to manage that.
What, in the time?
Oh, I think with the ravenous appetite that's
I see the people surrounding us all with their arms outstretched. Right, back to the problem in hand about housing. Craig Underwood is managing partner of a law firm which specialises in property services, and I suggested to him that while we knew that the Equality Act related to goods and services offers some protection against direct discrimination, wasn't the real problem with property unprovable indirect discrimination?
I think it's very difficult. You'd probably be very hard pressed to find a situation where somebody with visual impairment has been discriminated against in a very overt or clear way. I think what's far more likely to happen is that somebody with a disability is the subject of indirect discrimination, or the type of discrimination which is a lot more covert. And so in practical terms, for instance, it may well be that when you speak to a private landlord, and very often you have to remember that private landlords use letting agents and estate agents to deal with their properties on their behalf, that in applying to become a tenant, you don't necessarily become that tenant because you're vetted out. And it may well be that you're not vetted out because you have a disability, but it may be for some other reason. And I think that's probably the problem that people with disabilities face.
Because that's what we hear a lot, you see. We hear people say, look, I think I've been discriminated against, but I can't prove it, but I am suspicious.
I think that probably the system doesn't help in that sense, because I don't want to paint private landlords as being, the evil ones in the picture. At the end of the day, the private landlord system is predominantly, over 55% of the private landlord market is made up of people who own just one house. And I think it's probably the case that those landlords have a lack of awareness about some of the rights that those with disabilities have. It's probably the case that some landlords also just don't have the underlying support and infrastructure to be able to provide what they perceive to be onerous obligations to people with disabilities. And I think there is a misconception within the private rental space as to just what facilities, aids and appliances and reasonable adjustments landlords might have to make.
Daniel, Burgess,
Yes.
does that ring bells with you, this idea that it is indirect discrimination that people are finding?
Yes, I believe so. I do believe that. I mean, they make an assumption. I had an experience with one of our agents who had seen a property and then had made the assumption he didn't think it would be suitable. And I said, and my partner and I said, well, we'll be the judge of that.
What did he base that on? Do you know?
Well, I think it was because there were steps and it was coming onto a main road. And I thought, well, I know that there are steps and I know that there's a gate at the end of the road, so I know to take precautions.
Ben Rendell, I think you feel you found yourself in this position, perhaps in a way that will ring a lot of bells, and that's over guide dogs.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, before I decided to buy, I was in the rental market a couple of times looking for properties. Both times I had my guide dog with me and came across a lot of problems. You know, even I didn't get as far as looking at properties. It was just ringing letting agents saying, this is what I need, this is what I want. And by the way, I've got a guide dog. And, you know, sometimes they'd be like, oh, we'll ring you back, and then you'd never get a phone call, or they'd say there's no pets, and then you'd go through explain that it's not a pet, and then they'd say, oh, we have to ask the landlord. And yeah.
Yes, and I agree with Ben on that point as well. Exactly the same thing. You know, people don't get back to you. You're expected to do all the work yourself.
But again, it's proving that that's happened, that it's the problem.
It is, because they'll never admit to it, and, you know, they'll just say, oh, the landlord said this, or we've let it to someone else, or it's gone off the market, or any number of excuses, but they might not be because of the dog, but you can never prove it. And even if you could prove it, how would you then enforce that portion of the law, as it were?
Well, on this in particular, Craig Underwood has some very interesting and intriguing things to say regarding the law on this.
The first position is, in law, it is unlawful for you to refuse a tenancy on the basis that you don't want to have the tenant have a guide dog or a hearing dog or anything of that nature. The question is whether or not you'll ever find out whether or not that's the reason that you've been refused a tenancy. And I think the redress that you have is very much dependent on how you can prove that was the reason for you not being able to get that tenancy.
And I mean, are there any ways that you can do that?
Well, there is a situation in terms of how you disclose whether or not you have a disability, which might give rise to some indirect or covert discrimination. It's very difficult to give advice about disclosure. Firstly, the law says that you are not under positive duty to disclose any disability. So, following that to its logical conclusion, you don't need, as somebody who's got visual impairment, to tell anybody that you have a guide dog. However, in practical terms, it has to be said that there are circumstances in which making a disclosure that you have a disability is actually in your favour, and that's particularly the case if you're in social housing or local authority housing. But if you're in a privately rented situation, I think it's very difficult to envisage a situation whereby that disclosure, even if it's not made, is not going to be something that the landlord finds out about. As with an employer-employee relationship, a landlord and tenant relationship is one which, you know, ultimately is probably best founded on trust, openness and transparency. So I wouldn't advise necessarily you embarking upon what should be an enduring relationship with not making full disclosure. But be under no illusion that you're under a positive duty to do so. You're not.
So after the contract has been signed, what happens if either they've not disclosed that they got a guide dog or they acquire a guide dog?
If it's a situation where your visual impairment had deteriorated and you therefore needed to have a guide dog after the event, then again, the law says that you must make reasonable adjustments, and therefore, upon disclosing that you now required additional aids and services, in this case a guide dog or a hearing dog or whatever that might be, then your landlord will be on a duty to make sure that any such policy which required them to refuse household pets would be amended to take into account the fact that you now needed a guide dog.
Well, Ben and Danielle, can I ask you both very quickly, does that come as a surprise to you that you're under no obligation to tell them, and would you take that advice? Danielle first, maybe?
I probably would take that advice, actually. It is a bit of a surprise, but I think I will go along with that, definitely.
And Ben?
To me, it's not a surprise, but to be honest, I wouldn't feel comfortable not telling someone about it, because I think it is best to be open and honest, but that seems to get us into more trouble than it's worth. So.
Well, Ben Rendell, Danielle Burgess, thank you both very much for joining us, and good luck. Or Ben's in, and Danielle, I hope things go well for you.
Thank you very much.
And I'm only sorry you're both too far away to get a piece of Penny's tiramisu, because you're sort of more or less putting the finishing touches to this now. So where have you got to?
Well, I've got a little sieve here and a box of cocoa powder, which smells really chocolatey. And this is the good bit for blind people, is trying to put cocoa powder through a sieve onto something that you can't see. So you're guiding yourself along this tiramisu thing and just pushing it through, and adding a bit more. And I'm glad I'm not cleaning this studio up tomorrow.
No, I don't get that on my braille. Just while you're doing this, tell us a bit more about the prize that you've won, which is going to take you around the world. It's the Holman Prize. What is it?
Well, it's run by an organisation in San Francisco, and they saw my Baking Blind videos online, and they invited me to compete. In fact, at the end of the day, it was over 200 people were candidates from 27 countries. And I was one of the 3 winners. I am one of the 3 winners.
So what swung it, do you think, Penny? What did you have to do?
It was about promoting different perceptions of blind people and other disabled people. It was about getting good visibility for those new messages. But one of the other winners is going to kayak across the Bosphorus with some specially adapted navigation equipment.
Which would you rather do, bake or kayak across the Bosphorus?
Well, I'd rather swim, but I gather it's a really busy shipping lane.
Right. But this is very much about promoting the image of what blind people can do, isn't it?
Yeah. For me, that's really important.
And in a way ties in with what we were talking about the kind of misconceptions that seem to crop up with people in the housing market, for example.
Yeah, I'm trying to use food because everybody eats. Most people cook. It's really popular in the media. And if one can show that actually I can do it and other blind people are cooking with me too, and you get a good reaction. And
you'll be making videos, I think, as you travel around.
Everywhere we go, every recipe we shoot, we'll be publishing over about a year. We're reckoning to make about 50 videos over the year.
Well, I'm afraid the pinger timer of life is against you. Well, let me just remind anyone with a comment, you can call our action line on 0800 044 044. You can email intouch@bbc.co.uk, or you can go to our website to download tonight's podcast. You can't download Penny's pudding, but producer Lee Kumatat and I can. And I've got the plate here. I'll just put my fingers in it, but never mind. It tastes delicious, Penny. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
This is Chris.
And this is Pauline.
Reading out the questions for the client consultation survey. This is advanced information in order to give you more time to consider your responses. Client consultation. Established in 1895, the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind, IWSB, is one of the oldest independent charities on the Isle of Wight. We are inviting clients and prospective clients to have their say and identify their priorities in a consultation exercise that will help determine Isle of Wight Society for the Blind future plans and activities. Our continuing purpose is to provide practical, emotional and educational support for visually impaired people, their families and carers, and promote awareness of the needs of those affected by sight loss amongst the general public.
We strive to help people maintain independence, learn new skills and participate in social, physical and educational activities to reduce loneliness and isolation. Currently, we organise weekly coffee mornings, educational talks and seminars, craft clubs, weekly swimming sessions, walking and golf, a visiting and befriending service, a weekly audio version of the Isle of Wight County Press, and a library of audio books. To help ensure the services we provide in the future meet the needs of our existing and potential clients, the Society will use the survey to guide and develop our strategic plans. With your help, we can ensure that our resources are targeted wisely to meet your needs. Thank you very much for participating in this survey. Your feedback is invaluable in guiding our future.
Do you currently use any of the services supported by the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind? Your answer is either yes or no.
If you answered no, please go to question 3. If you answered yes, please rate how positive each have on your well-being under the following. And the headings are not applicable, not at all, slightly positive, moderately positive, very positive, extremely positive. This is Strollers Walking Group, Dolphin Swimming Group, Millbrook House Weekly Coffee Morning,
Bembridge Monthly Coffee Morning,
Knighton Monthly Coffee Morning,
Freshwater Monthly Coffee Morning,
Owls, Millbrook House, meeting with guest speaker,
Knitters and Natterers Social Group at Millbrook House,
Striders Walking Group,
Talking News,
Audio Library,
Newsletter,
Millbrook House Resource Room of Aids and Equipment for the Visually Impaired,
Millbrook House Braille Document Production,
Millbrook House as a point of contact for information for the visually impaired,
Isle of Wight Society for the Blind Volunteer Home Visit Service,
opportunities to volunteer for IWSB,
the Golf Group
and the 10-pin bowling group. Please rate how positive an impact the following services might have on your well-being if IWSB were able to coordinate them for clients. As with our existing provision, the Society covers any general administrative, organisational costs and room use at Millbrook House. Categories are, and we'd like you to say not at all, or slightly positive, moderately positive, very positive, extremely positive. Age-appropriate exercise classes such as yoga.
Other sport or activity taster days.
Support to participate in a sponsored challenge event, e.g. the Isle of Wight Cycle Challenge, walk, run, marathon, skydive, etc., to raise awareness and funds for the Society.
Craft taster sessions.
Monthly food and drink tasting group with sessions at Millbrook House.
Monthly food and drink tasting group with sessions at other venues.
Quarterly day trips to Isle of Wight heritage sites or tourist attractions.
Quarterly day trips to the mainland heritage sites or tourist attractions.
Holidays and short breaks organised by the Society, supported with the provision of sighted volunteers to assist with guiding, not care provision.
Monthly music group to include singing, listening, an occasional concert or live performance visits.
Quarterly storytelling or poetry recital group, your chance to spin a good yarn or share favourite poems.
Social activities closer to your home.
Introduction to Technology course of perhaps 6 weekly sessions looking at computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Monthly technology group to keep abreast of development in computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Quarterly technology group to keep abreast of development in computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Evening/weekend social group for 65+ year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 50 to 64-year-olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 36 to 49-year-olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 19 to 35-year-olds.
Evening, social activities for young people aged 16 to 18 years.
Evening social club for 11 to 15-year-olds.
Evening social club for 7 to 10-year-olds.
Quarterly evening social meeting at Millbrook House for parents, guardians, carers of young people with visual impairment, with separate activities arranged for any accompanying young people.
School summer holiday activities or social event for visually impaired young people and their parents, guardians or carers.
Dancing.
Please add any further suggestions of services or activities you would like the Society to provide.
Other suggestions. Please suggest any sport or activities you would like to try. Please identify the challenge event or activity you would be interested in. Please suggest any craft activities you would like to try. Please indicate here the styles of music you would enjoy.
In relation to social and recreational activities, please indicate whether you would generally prefer activities targeted and arranged specifically for those with visual impairment, or activities that are open to both sighted and visually impaired people where reasonable adjustments are made to accommodate the particular needs of the visually impaired.
Visual impairment aside, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very healthy, how healthy do you feel at the moment?
Being connected is more than having a network of friends and family. It could include being connected to your community, having the ability to access services or help when you need it, and being digitally connected. On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very connected, how connected to others do you feel?
On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very confident, how confident are you using technology, the internet in everyday life? For example, using email, the internet, social media, online banking, shopping, etc.
How do you find out about the following? The headings are printed leaflets or posters, word of mouth, Isle of Wight Society for the Blind website, other internet, social media, radio, talking news, or other, and then please specify. Local events, social activities. Contact details for organisations and services for the visually impaired. Health information relating to sight loss. Other health services and information. And travel.
About Isle of Wight Society for the Blind, what, if anything, do you know about Isle of Wight Society for the Blind? How would you describe Isle of Wight Society for the Blind to others?
Would you favour a name change of the Society to promote a more inclusive organisation that supported those with visual impairment? For example, Isle of Wight Vision. Your answer is yes or no.
Would you like to suggest a new working name for the Society that would reflect a more inclusive and forward-looking ethos? Please remember that this survey and all responses are completely anonymous. Information gathered is purely to enable us to better understand the needs of visually impaired islanders to inform our future plans and services.
Please indicate which age range you are in. Under 10 years, 11 to 15 years, 16 to 18 years, 19 to 35 years, 36 to 49 years, 50 to 64 years, 65 to 74 years, 75 to 84 years, 85 plus years, or you've the option prefer not to say.
What is your gender?
What is your current status? Please tick all that apply. Are you a full-time student of any age? A part-time student of any age? Employed? Homemaker? Unemployed? Semi-retired? Or retired?
Do you volunteer for any organisation? Yes? No? Prefer not to say? If yes, which organisation?
Please tell us the first part, that is the 4 digits, of your postcode.
Please let us have any comments, questions or concerns.
Please identify if you have completed this and independently, firstly as a visually impaired client or prospective client, or as a volunteer, carer, guardian or visually impaired parent.
Thank you for completing this survey.